Hey there, and welcome back to Stop the Clock with Brad. Glad you joined us for another episode. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I've got the time to do it, so here she is. So, we talked in the past about the differences between beef and lamb when I was in Turkey because it was more abundant there and cheaper. So, I'm going to do the same thing today, but with beef and pork. We all know that beef is a central part of the carnivore diet because if you eat beef, beef heart, liver, you can get everything that you need except for potassium, and that's where an avocado comes in. So that's a complete diet. The minerals, vitamins are more bioavailable than they are in plants. You have to eat like so many more vegetables to get the same amount of nutrients that you get from meat, primarily beef. But we saw with beef and pork that they're very, very close in a lot of the key nutrients that our body needs to function. Well, how does pork fare? Why I bring up pork? Because as you see here, pork is the most consumed meat in the world. 36% of the world eats pork versus 24% to beef and 33% to chicken. You see that lamb and sheep come in at only 5%. Now, that's despite almost 30% of the world not eating pork because of religious reasons. Muslims and Jews, they do not eat pork. But there's other parts of the world, like Asia, that's very densely populated, that pork is a staple of their diet. We also know in a lot of those countries, they age very well. And this is not a carnivore channel. This is a healthy aging and trying to age as slowly as possible channel. And so that's of interest to us, is that they eat a lot of pork and they seem to thrive doing that. We talked about how beef was much more expensive when I was in Turkey, and that's the case in a lot of the world. I know here where I am in Southern America, beef is way more expensive than pork, at least twice as expensive on a lot of the better cuts, 25, 30% more expensive on other things. You can buy pork ribs, pork shoulder, pork roast, all those things, and they're going to be way less expensive than beef. Pigs are just cheaper to raise, and they're more in abundance here. There's a lot of pig farmers around the world, and especially in America. So price is a big barrier for a lot of people that talk about the carnivore diet when they look at people just like on social media eating ribeyes. A lot of carnivores just eat ground beef. But even ground beef, the grass-fed, the better ground beef, is going to be more expensive than pork. So pork is very available in the countries that eat it. If you go to the meat counter, as you see here, there's just as much pork as there is anything else. And the prices are just a lot better. So that's a reason when you see pork eaten and consumed so much around the world, it's not just that people like the taste, it's that it's available and it's cheaper. One thing to keep in mind though, especially for those of us that are trying to age well, we know that sugar and glucose, those spikes in your blood, those are not good for us. Well, a lot of the pork recipes tend to be sweeter. If you look at any barbecue recipe, and we know how much people like barbecue, not just in America, but around the world, all your pork recipes are going to have brown sugar, table sugar, turbinado sugar in the rubs that go on them. That's not including the sauce. The sauces, if you ever pulled a barbecue sauce off of the shelf, do that and look at the sugar content of these things. They've got multiple kinds of sugar in them, and a lot of the commercial ones are fueled with high fructose corn syrup, so we know they're even worse for us. Whereas with beef, most of your beef rubs, they're not going to have any sugar at all. It's going to be salt, pepper, garlic, paprika, that kind of stuff. They're not going to have sugar, whereas a lot of your pork recipes do, and you've got to find a way to substitute those, and that's where some of your price comes in, doing things like monk fruit, trying to get the sugar out of your rubs where you can eat it on, say, a keto carnivore type of diet That's where the price starts to increase, and the difficulty, because you can't just walk into every store and find monk fruit. So for what we're doing here, we're going to look at 1 ounce of beef versus 1 ounce with pork. Now, pork is generally a leaner meat, so this beef has had some of the fat trimmed off of it. And we know if you're a carnivore, we need that fat. And so we look at beef like a ribeye is just going to be a fattier cut of meat than most of what your pork's going to be. So let's look at the facts. So beef's a little higher in calories, 94 versus 75. The weight is the same. In the macros, the fat in beef, as we just talked about, is 13% versus 9% for pork. The protein is higher in the pork as well, 10% to 8%. So far, if you look at it, as far as health, depending on where you're going, pork is higher in protein and leaner. So if you're trying to achieve certain body composition goals, pork might be a good option for you just with the macros. Now let's look at some of the micronutrients. So as far as health goes, pork is a lot higher with vitamin D. We know how much vitamin D is important to us, especially during the winter months when we can't get out in the sun. Right now where I am, it's summer, so I'm getting tons of vitamin D. But then as soon as late October gets here, the benefits of the sun go away. If you look at vitamin B1, pork is double that of beef. If you look at polysaturated fat, pork is a lot higher there. Selenium, double the amount of pork. That's a vital nutrient for us. Magnesium is about 1-to-1, 28 milligrams for pork and 21 for beef. Potassium, 423 versus 318 for beef. And phosphorus is about the same, 246 to 198. If we now go and look at a breakdown of the fats in the meat, you see that the saturated fat is 2.3 to 2.9, mono 4.1 to 4.3. Those are right there. The poly, even though it's a low level, the pork is twice as much as the beef. Now, another thing to consider is that beef has CLA and omega-3s. And we all know that CLA is a great nutrient. Now, this is only in grass-fed beef, right? Grass-fed beef. CLA really is good for you it's been shown to help achieve better body composition. It works in your body, and again, this has been out for years. I'm not breaking any new ground here as far as burning fat and making you look better. Another caution about pork, just like with the sweetness of the rubs and the sauce, is a lot of your processed porks like bacon, and we all know people love bacon here, a lot of that has nitrates and nitrites. They're mainly used to preserve the meat, but they can also improve the taste. Well, once those get into your gut and combine with protein, they turn into something called nitrosamines, and those can become carcinogenic in your body, and that's why they're frowned upon, because we know that carcinogens are akin to cancer, and none of us want that. So when you're shopping for these things, you need to find the nitrite-free versions. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're out there. Lastly, let's talk about 2 minerals we haven't talked about yet. That is zinc and iron. We all know that zinc and iron are important for our systems. Zinc is a really good mineral to help us sleep, and it helps with healing. If you see here, did a little strongman training with kegs, busted some blood vessels. Now I have a bruise. Well, if my zinc levels are low, that's going to take longer to heal. If my zinc levels are higher, it's going to heal in less time. So let's look at the difference here. And this is where beef, for me, starts to pull away. The zinc level is more than double in beef, and the iron level is almost 3 times as much with pork versus beef. So those are two very important minerals for us, and they're much higher in beef. So if we look at all this, which one wins? Well, for me, it's beef. I like my body composition. I can choose less fatty cuts of meat if I want to. I don't have to eat ribeye all the time. I can eat sirloin, things like that, if I want to cut down my fat percentage to lean out. And I can cut that fat down, but I'm not going to lose the other health benefits that come with beef. And again, I'm not a big pork eater because of the sweetness of the meats. It's just more of a challenge to prepare it and prepare any type of rub or again sauce. Remember, I'm not just cooking for myself, I'm cooking for my family. That is going to be appealing to all of them, that'll taste good, that'll be devoid of sugar. It's almost impossible to do. Whereas with beef, again, I can put a simple rub on beef, grill it, everybody's going to love it, and it's going to have no sugar whatsoever. So if you were interested in this subject, I hope this helped. I appreciate you watching. If you like want to learn anything else, here's like another video. It's here somewhere. And remember, aging is a choice.